Chapter 4. Into the Fray. The storm broke over the mountains with a roar, casting Kaelin and Serenia into a world of wind and rain. The narrow path they followed twisted sharply along the cliffs, the jagged rocks below veiled in mist. Each step was treacherous, the ground slick with mud and loose stones. Kaelin led the way, his sword drawn despite the storm. His green eyes scanned the path ahead, ever vigilant, though the weight of unease pressed heavily on his mind. Every gust of wind and crackle of loose stone set his senses on edge, a constant reminder of how exposed they were. Behind him, Serenia's staff emitted a faint, steady glow, the golden light a beacon in the chaos, yet it only deepened Kaelin's resolve to protect her. He couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that the shadows held more than just the storm's fury. Something unseen was watching, waiting. "We need to find shelter," Serenia called over the howl of the wind. Kaelin glanced back at her, his expression grim. "Not yet. This storm is the least of our worries." As if to punctuate his words, a distant rumble echoed through the mountains. It wasn't thunder. Kaelin's grip on his sword tightened. "They're close," he muttered. The first arrow struck the rock at Kaelin's feet, shattering on impact. He reacted instantly, grabbing Serenia and pulling her behind a boulder as more arrows rained down around them. "Stay low," he commanded, his voice sharp over the storm. From the shadows of the cliffs emerged figures cloaked in black, their movements swift and precise like phantoms in the storm. Malric's assassins were clad in armor padded to muffle sound, their curved blades glinting faintly in the dim light. The bows they carried were sleek and deadly, tipped with barbed arrows designed to pierce through flesh and bone. Their faces were hidden behind intricate masks carved with cruel, expressionless visages, making them seem less human and more like creatures of nightmare. They moved with an eerie synchronicity, fanning out to encircle Kaelin and Serenia with predatory intent. Kaelin surged forward, his sword flashing in the dim light with a precision born of years of battle. He moved like a predator, each strike calculated to exploit a weakness. His blade met the first attackers with a resounding clash, the impact reverberating through the narrow pass. With a swift feint, he sidestepped the assassin's thrust, countering with a powerful slash that left no room for recovery. Every motion was deliberate, his footwork steady despite the uneven terrain. The narrow pass became his ally as he forced the assassins into positions where they couldn't overwhelm him, his intensity unrelenting. Serenia crouched behind the boulder, her staff glowing brighter as she whispered an incantation. A pulse of golden light burst outward, momentarily blinding the assassins. "I can hold them off," Kaelin shouted, deflecting a blade aimed at his throat. "Use your magic." Serenia stepped out from cover, her amber eyes blazing with determination. She thrust her staff forward, the golden light intensifying as it surged toward the attackers. The strain showed in the tightness of her jaw and the trembling of her hands. But she didn't falter. The wave of magic struck two assassins, their weapons clattering to the ground as the light seared through their shadows. Beads of sweat glistened on Serenia's brow, and her breath came in short, labored bursts. Despite the toll it took, she pushed onward, her voice steady as she whispered another incantation. This was no simple spell. It was a battle of will, and she would not yield. But more came. Kaelin fought like a man possessed, his movements a blur of precision and power. For every assassin he cut down, another seemed to take their place. "They're trying to separate us," Serenia shouted, her voice edged with urgency. Kaelin didn't reply. His focus was absolute, his strikes deliberate. When one assassin lunged for Serenia, Kaelin was there in an instant, driving his sword through the attacker's chest. When the last assassin fell, the storm seemed to ease, leaving only the sound of labored breathing and the distant roll of thunder. Kalen wiped his blade clean on the cloak of a fallen attacker before turning to Serenia. "You're hurt," she said, noticing a thin line of blood seeping through his sleeve. "It's nothing," he replied gruffly. He knelt beside one of the assassins who was still alive, though barely. The man's mask had been torn away, revealing a gaunt face twisted in pain. Kalen grabbed him by the collar. "Who sent you?" The assassin coughed, blood flecking his lips. "You already know the answer," he rasped. "Malric, he's coming." "Why now? What does he want?" Serenia demanded, stepping closer. Her staff's light cast eerie shadows across the assassin's face. The man's eyes flicked to her, a faint smirk curling his lips. "You're not safe, not even in Duskville. He has eyes everywhere." Kalen's jaw tightened, but before he could press further, the assassin's body went limp. He was dead. Serenia's shoulders sagged, her grip on her staff loosening. "A spy in Duskville," she murmured. "That's how they found us so quickly." Kalen stood, his expression dark. "Then we can't go back. We keep moving." Later that night they made camp in the shelter of a rocky overhang. The fire crackled softly, casting warm light over their tired faces. Kalen sat sharpening his sword, the rhythmic scrape of steel on stone, the only sound for a time. The crisp woody scent of the campfire mingled with the damp earth, a reminder of the storm's lingering presence. The flames danced and crackled, casting flickering shadows on the rocky overhang above. A cool breeze slipped through the camp, carrying with it the faint tang of pine and the distant howl of the wind. Kalen's expression was unreadable, but the tension in his shoulders spoke of a man far from at ease, even in this fleeting moment of respite. "You're quiet," Serenia said, breaking the silence. Kalen didn't look up. "Thinking? About what?" He paused, the whetstone stilling in his hand. "About how many more of them we'll have to face. About how long we can keep running before they catch us." Serenia watched him, her expression softening. "You're not alone in this, Kalen. Whatever happens, we face it together." Kalen met her gaze, something unspoken passing between them. He nodded, returning to his task. "You did well today," he said quietly. "The magic. It's stronger than I thought." Serenia smiled faintly. "It's stronger when I have a reason to use it." The next morning the storm had passed, leaving the world washed in cold light. As they made their way down the mountain, the path widened, leading them to a small, desolate village. The houses were crumbling, their roofs caved in, and the air carried a faint, acrid smell. "What happened here?" Serenia asked, her voice hushed. Kalen stepped cautiously into the village square, his hand on the hilt of his sword. The silence pressed down like a weight, broken only by the distant creak of a warped wooden sign swaying in the wind. The acrid smell of ash lingered in the air, mingling with the earthy scent of decay. Shadows clung stubbornly to the ruins, stretching across the crumbled walls and shattered windows of homes long abandoned. Every step felt intrusive, as if the village itself resented their presence, and the oppressive stillness seemed to amplify the faint, ghostly whispers that drifted through the square. The silence was unnatural, oppressive. Then came the whispers, soft, indistinct, like voices carried on the wind. "Do you hear that?" Serenia asked, her staff glowing brighter. Kalen nodded, his eyes narrowing. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. A shadow moved at the edge of his vision, slipping between the ruins. "We're not alone," he said, his voice low.